my name's Stephen Gray. I am the CEO of the Code Registry. I'm here with Kieran, one of our engineers, and we want to take some time today and put together a lot of information we've talked about on hundreds of calls we've had with investors, M&A consultancies, venture capitalist firms, private equity companies, and so on. We've covered a lot of questions in these calls with some really valuable knowledge, and we thought it made sense to put all this into one place, record it, get it out on socials, and really provide that value back to that group of customers. So I'm in the hot seat today. Kieran's going to put all those questions together, and he's going to grill me, and we're going to get those answers recorded and see how it goes. So over to you, Kieran.
Cool. Before we get started with the main questions, just briefly tell me what use cases we've identified with investors and tech due diligence.
Yep, so there's a few. So M&A consultancies, these are guys on companies who are brought in to consult on mergers and acquisition deals. So they could be on the sell side, the buy side. They're brought in to essentially find out to do with software, what's going on with the code, are there risks, what is there in the code we should be aware about. That's one use case. Another are venture capitalist firms, private equity, who often they either do a lot of mergers and acquisition deals, and they need to often look at software and code and what's going on with code as part of that process, as part of their due diligence. And another is big portfolios of companies. So we talk to some companies who have portfolios of tens, 20s, hundreds, sometimes even thousands of companies in their portfolio. And where we can help with that is keeping on top of their portfolio's code health. At the click of a button, they can look at any of those portfolios companies' software, see if they're keeping on top of their code health, see if there's any security issues they should be aware of, and so on. So yeah, those are the use cases we're looking at.
Okay, first question. Why is it so hard for investors to understand who actually contributed what inside of a code base?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So by default, it's not data that's easy to come by. You need access to the change history. If you get that, and if your partner, if your code due diligence partner has that, are they giving you the granularity you need? So can you see exactly who's worked on what? And this isn't just recent data. We're looking at stuff a year ago, 2 years ago. You could have code going back 20 years. Have you got that full history? Is your code due diligence partner telling you who's been the most productive, not just now, but a year ago, 2 years ago? The development teams are dynamic. They change all the time. In some companies, there is high turnover. You need to know all of this data so you can see things like risks of knowledge loss. We know that developers can work in a company on code for years. They could have worked in it right from the start. They could have worked there 10 years and they leave because they've got a better offer somewhere else. That's just how things go. With them goes a lot of knowledge in their heads. We know that, but it's happened to all of us. It may have been one of us that's done it in the past and gone to another business. We take that knowledge with us. Has it been probably handed over to other devs? Has it been documented so that other devs can very seamlessly carry that on? As an investor looking at a deal, you don't know that. And you don't necessarily know that when you get information back from your code due diligence partner. It's something you really need to grill and dig into. So it can be difficult. If you can get access to the change history, it's possible and is really key to understanding things like who's been working on what, who's very clearly the biggest contributor to this code base and so on. Because we call them key people of influence. They need to be looked after and kept happy, especially when you're looking through a deal, especially when you're looking at an acquisition. We need that team stability, so we need to know who those key people are. So yeah, very important.
What risks do investors face when code knowledge is concentrated in just one or two developers?
Yeah, so this is often not talked about enough. So we mentioned this a bit before, but essentially, I'm going to talk about a real use case from earlier this year. So we were consulting on a deal for a venture capitalist company. They were looking at, I think they were on the buy side. We helped them look at the code base and the history of changes. So we found that 75% of all work was done by 4 developers. That's not totally uncommon. What was a risk in that data was that one of the guys was still active in the company and 3 of the guys had left. So that one guy that was still at the business had a whole wealth of knowledge in his head. And as part of that, if it's an acquisition or if you're advising on the deal on the buy side, it's a risk, because if that guy now leaves, maybe there's instability because of the deal, maybe he just leaves for any other reason. If he leaves, he's taken all that knowledge with him. And as we mentioned before, we don't know if he's documented that. We don't know if that's been passed on to his peers. And that could be a big risk. And it was on that deal that we consulted on. So there can be a lot of hidden risk there that's often overlooked. And it's something that we think is really important.
How does the Code Registry help with identifying technical debt during diligence?
Yeah, technical debt is massive. It's very important, and then rightly so. So what we do is we do a very thorough check for any open source components. So open source components by themselves aren't tech debt on their own, but if they're outdated, they start to become that tech debt. We look at whether they're outdated, how big they are, how outdated they are. So we look at the very small code snippet level detection. So some tools and partners will look at a certain package being included and be like, yep, that's outdated. Some will look at a folder or a file. But if in our platform, if a developer has gone off to GitHub or Stack Overflow or ChatGPT now, and has copied an answer into their project and just carried on, if that actually came from a package that had a license and it needs to be compliant with the license and it's actually outdated, often that'll be overlooked. So we find that stuff as well. So it's very granular. We report on it all. You can export all of that data in common SBOM formats, so software bill of material formats that are accepted by auditing tools and other systems and so on. So you can have that on file, ready to go when you need it.
Why is open source and licensing exposure such a big issue during diligence?
This is a good one because a lot of people hear open source, and not just developers. Some developers do this as well. A lot of business leaders and investors and stakeholders and so on will hear open source and be like, that's fine. We can do what we want with it because it's labeled as open source, no risk there. And that's not true. So open source packages and software and code and libraries and so on can still carry license compliance risk. You could have 50 bits of open source code in your code base. You could be going through a fundraise, you'd be going through an audit, whatever it is you're doing. Some of those packages could have licenses, and we just thought, okay, it's fine, they're all open source, no problem. But actually, you could have been using that in a commercial product, and you must have been compliant with those licenses to use that code, or giving attribution or something, and you haven't been doing it, and suddenly you're in hot water because it's been overlooked. So we surface all of that sort of stuff.
What surprises do buyers usually discover after a deal, and how can we reveal them before the acquisition?
The biggest one will be security vulnerabilities. So what we're hearing when we talk to people is that they see the things going on in the media. They see the horror stories in technical news where there's been a data breach or some sort of vulnerability has led to something like that. And the other interesting thing we hear is from investment groups and consultants and so on, that often, surprise, surprise, some of the times the code is not looked at all. So as part of a deal, as part of an acquisition, as long as the software is working and it's providing value and it's earning revenue for the business, everything else is okay. But what can happen is you can finish that deal, you could be a year down the line, 2 years down the line, and suddenly you've got a data breach because there's a vulnerability there that was never even looked at. You could have found that right at the start. It could have been part of the deal requirements that was fixed, or it could have been planned for post-deal that was fixed as a priority, if it was just simply looked at the right time. So we've seen that, and we've heard that from real people on calls, and we've seen it in the news that these things happen. We believe we can do something about that.
Why do traditional code audits take months and cost hundreds of thousands?
So we're coming into Code Due Diligence as a disrupting new competitor. It's funny because, not funny, it's interesting because we talk to a lot of companies who have Code Due Diligence partners. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially per deal to understand what's going on with the code. And we've seen examples of what they get back from those audits, and they're often very, for lack of a better term, lacking in their detail. Sometimes open source, for example, could be a single line of vulnerabilities, could be a few bullet points, and it could be so much more. And it surprises us that you can spend that much and get so little back for something that's so critically important. The only thing we can see from conversations we've had and research we've done is that it's a lot of manual processes. It's someone manually going through the code line by line, which is fine. That's what the norm has been. but we think it's something that can change and be improved. So the Code Registry can do 80% of that work in an hour, based on the size of the code, which means that we can spend the rest of the time doing a deeper consultancy, deep dive reports on like, what are you trying to figure out for this deal? What are your goals for this deal? So we know that time is of the essence when it comes to like an M&A deal. Often some of these consultants and companies that do a lot of these deals get a couple of weeks to do the code due diligence part. What the most extreme case we saw was an M&A consultancy firm gets 8 hours to do the code due diligence report. So we understand that when you have that constraint on time, you sometimes can't go deep into all the varied sorts of issues you have. With something like the Code Registry, however, even if you just have 8 hours, we can spend 1 hour of that letting our tech do the work, and the rest of the time, additional research on top, additional consultancy to really get you value out of a much quicker, much more cost-effective audit on code.
How does the local code agent solve access and confidentiality issues for diligence teams?
The local code agent is a feature we released towards the start of 2025. It was based specifically on this use case. So we've spoken to large M&A consultancy companies and management consultancies and so on who do a lot of these deals. And we've seen the numbers such as 60, 70, 80% of deals, they struggle to actually get access to the code at all. So they're basing their due diligence on things outside of the code. So like policies and practices and what's the team like, what's the infrastructure like. And they, in some cases, have to skip the code entirely. That will be down to things like really strict security policies where a target company is part of that deal. No matter what the scenario is, they cannot let an external party have access to the code, not without maybe them physically coming to the property and looking at a developer's computer or something like that. So the local code agent wants to get around that issue, where in that scenario, that company with the really strict policies can run a single command, and we've basically packed all of our code analysis and intelligence platform into a single command. They run on their computer. It creates an anonymous zip file containing no source code, just the findings, and uploads that securely to our system. So the target company can also look at the zip file before they send it to us. So they can see, yeah, I'm happy with what's in here. There's nothing sensitive. Let's send it. And then the VC or the PE company can then still see those results in the web app as they would any other code access project. But they've been able to get around the issue of actual code access. So that was something that people are finding very valuable.
How do you help investors evaluate the true technical value of a company they're acquiring?
Technical value is an interesting one. It can mean a lot of things. The way we look at it is our platform will find and show various data points and signals that point towards what a code base is worth. So we have things like technical debt, code quality and security and so on, security posture, licensing exposure and so on. But another thing we did right from the start was, could we calculate what it would cost to write a code base from scratch, like on the market at the moment? So we have a custom algorithm that looks at essentially all languages on the market. We do average day rates in this custom database that we maintain. How common the language is, how verbose it is, how many lines of code could you write in a day potentially, how easy is it to find resources in that language, and then we use that to calculate a cost to replicate valuation. So it's not a valuation of the uniqueness of the IP or that sort of thing. It's essentially based on the volume of the code we're seeing right now. What could it cost to write that again from scratch on the market at the moment? So you can use those sorts of numbers and the other things like the code quality metrics and the complexity and the security posture and so on to put together and get an idea of valuation of a code base.
How often do you find a disconnect between what founders tell investors and the actual state of the code?
Does the founder know? I mean, that's an interesting one. So is the founder technical? Does the founder know? If the founder isn't technical, are they getting full transparency and details from the technical team? So assuming some of those things, do you want to base your due diligence just on what they're telling you? Or do you actually want to know yourself by looking at the code what the state of play is? We've heard from some big management consultancies who do thousands of these deals a year. They say at the start of a project or a due diligence, the company will tell us what they have. They'll tell us their architecture, the code, everything, and in most of those cases it's wrong. So that's straight out of the horse's mouth. We know that whether it's intentional or not, what they're telling the consultancies or the acquirers as part of a deal is not right. So what we are offering is intelligence backed by real data and real analysis of the code, so you can use that as part of your decision making process. So you're not just trusting what they're saying, but you're verifying with real analysis and using that as part of your due diligence and part of your negotiations and so
on. So have you got any examples of major disconnects that you've found through the platform?
Yeah, so the one that comes to mind, this is going back maybe a year or so. We were working with a small VC company who had a handful of companies in their portfolio, and they used our platform to look at one of the new companies. And we so our platform found all sorts of issues in the platform, which is commonly the case. Like, there's always something in there, and we didn't hear from the company for a couple of months. So we caught up with them again a couple of months later, see how things were going. It turned out that they found so many issues in that company's code, and then they had many meetings with the CTO of that portfolio company, who turned out had been hiding everything from everyone else. And the CTO was then fired as a result of those findings, and that was how that had turned out. So that was interesting because we hadn't known that, and we don't ever want to be we don't ever want to be the enemy of a CTO. There's definitely something I feel passionate about, there being transparency. In my career, I've always tried to be transparent between what is going on with code and the people who are interested and have a stake in that, in what's going on. And I think there needs to be a level of transparency. I don't think we can let things get to the point where you would be fired if the rest of the company found out the truth of what was going on with code. So that's a very interesting use case. That comes to mind.
How does the Code Registry reduce risk for M&A advisory and consultancy firms?
It's all about understanding as much as we can understand at the point of the deal, whether that's buy side, sell side. Sell side positioning yourself for the deal, buy side making sure you know the risks. It's all about knowing as much as we can at the right time to factor into not just the decision making, but factoring to forward planning, negotiating and everything. If you know everything that's wrong with the code, it doesn't mean the deal has to be off, and it doesn't mean that an acquirer is no longer interested. But from the buy side, you can make a plan for that, or you can make a requirement that some things are fixed as part of the deal. You can make a plan for how things are going to be fixed post deal and how resources will be used for that. It may help you negotiate the deal value as part of that work that needs being done. On the sell side, if you're looking to be acquired, you can position yourself and fix things before it gets to the point of the deal, and other people finding all those problems without you knowing. You can also make a plan for them. So let's say we've got 10 critical issues here, 20 high severity, we've got some tech debt. Okay, well, we're going to fix the high severity, the critical issues and the high severity. The tech debt we have a plan for, which we will make sure are done by this date. You can have all that ready. You can show that this is what you've been thinking about. You can show you've got it all in hand, all in good time for it not to affect the deal or your negotiations. So yeah, we think that's important.
How does that compare to more like traditional due diligence?
I think the main thing is how it's accessed and the time it takes. If your due diligence takes months, this could affect timelines. It can affect deal timelines and so on. Where time's of the essence, we know that is the case in some cases. And the other one is how these things are accessed. So our platform is made to be very easy to access, very easy to get code synced. It's very quick, and it's made to be able to be understood by anyone. Because going back to our original use case, it was made for non-technical people, so anyone can use the platform to understand these things about their code, and do it very quickly and very cost effectively.
How do you help investors catch security and compliance issues before a deal closes?
So part of it is due to what the platform does, and part of it is down to timing before a deal closes. So we would analyze the code very quickly. Is one of the main things is time to value. We always talk about it. We can show results of our analysis within an hour, within half an hour, depending on the size of the code. So we'll surface this information early. So open source dependencies, and whether they're tech debt, whether they're outdated, whether they have licenses. We'll look at security vulnerabilities in first and third party code, and then we'll look at things like productivity metrics and knowledge risk and so on. So we surface it quickly in good time for you to factor that into negotiations, conversations, and so on. We'll also add some additional consultancy. So what we do with like the larger M&A consultancies and enterprises is we use our tech to find all the issues, and then we add some additional time on top to do really deep dive reports and consultancy on issues we see and the goals of the deal. So all to help you get that information quicker, all in good time.
Why is having a repeatable, rational code audit process important for portfolio monitoring?
So we actually find that in most cases, so private equity companies that say have a large portfolio of companies they own, they don't have a way of easily monitoring what's going on with those companies' software and their code. Like we see why when we look at the history of things and code access and security and so on, we can see why it's been this way, and we do believe it can be better. So we spoke to a PE company 2 weeks ago, and when he understood that he could have one dashboard that had all of his portfolio companies, and with a single click can look at any of their code health, code security, license risk with a click of a button, his eyes were getting very wide, because there's something that so far has been an almost impossible task to try and get done. So yeah, we definitely think that it's important, especially when you may be buying and selling companies, they may be going through audits and doing their own fundraisers and so on. You need to be on top of this stuff, and we help them do that. So thanks for listening. If there's anything in this Q&A session that resonated with you in your use case, any pain points you're going through with legacy code, M&A deals, showing value in the work you do as a dev team, helping you understand as a business leader what's going on with your own important code, then get in touch, please. We're on socials. We've got a website to look at, and we'd love to jump on a call, show you a real demo, and show you how you can get value out of what we've built. Thank you.